Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the live today. My name is Nhlakanipho Ntombela, and today I'll be having Songezo join me for a live. Thank you very much for joining me. As we all very well much know, I'm always here trying to share as much knowledge as possible about property, the property industry, and today we'll be discussing the legal side of things. So for those of you who might not be particularly familiar with who I am, my name is Nhlakanipho Ntombela. And if you do look on my Instagram or anywhere of my social media pages, you'll notice that I am passionate and dedicated to sharing as much knowledge as I possibly can about everything finance related and everything property related. Today we'll be joined by Songezo, and he is a property lawyer. He is the director of Songezo Nyilla Inc. And he'll be sharing with us some tips and some of the legal side of things that we don't know, because obviously we're not lawyers. We are people who want to invest in property. Some of us are already investing in property, and the legal side of things are not particularly our skills and what we do know. So Songezo is going to be joining me today so that he can unpack some of the things that we don't understand about the property buying process and possibly the property selling process. So let me just allow him to join me. Songezo, if you could please, I think I saw you on. If you could please just request to join the live. I hope everyone is well. And today's session definitely is going to be one to remember. And I will save the live so that everyone can refer to it at any point in which you are unclear about certain things. And if you do need a property lawyer, do contact Songezo at Songezo Nyilla. Songezo _Nyilla_ Inc. on Instagram, or you can go to their website, which is songsinc.co.za. So songs is with a Z and not with a G, and is with a Z and not with an S. Sorry. So Songezo, you can request to join me. View going live. Okay. There
Hey,
you go.
Chaka.
Great stuff. Hi, Songezo. How are you?
Hello, what is it? Hello, can you hear me, Chaka?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much for agreeing to join me today. And I do hope that today's session will educate as many people as possible about property and about the legal of property. If you can just give us a short background about who you are and your law firm.
Yes, so your signal is cutting a little bit, but I can hear you perfectly. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
You are breaking up a bit. I can barely hear you. Hey, Songezo, can you hear me? I'm not sure if it's my connection.
Yeah. Look, I can hear you, I can see you.
Okay, great stuff. I can also hear you and I can see you.
Yeah, let me try the question again.
Okay. All right, cool. So, okay, Songezo is gonna join us back just now. But for those of you who are joining us right now, Songezo is a property lawyer, and he's an attorney with years and years of experience in the property space. So he's gonna be just sharing with us some of the things that we don't understand. Things like the difference between transfer duty and transfer costs. Because honestly, I don't know what they are. I don't know why we even pay for those fees. So there's certain things that I just want them to break down for us so we can have a better understanding of the legal side. As we know, property is a very legal intensive process with a lot of paperwork and a lot of documentation. And you don't want to make stupid mistakes when you are filling out that documentation, when you are purchasing your first property. So I felt it was very relevant to get a lawyer to actually come and speak to us about the relevant, about all the relevant property side of things. So Songezo's back. Let me just accept him. Okay, yeah, so he's connecting. So as I was saying, like, we basically, okay, cool. It's much better. Yeah, I got you. Much
Okay.
better.
Okay.
All right, great
Okay.
stuff. All right, thanks again for joining me today. If you could just give us a brief background of who you are, your company, and what you guys do.
Yes, thank you, Tlaka. Thank you for allowing me to join you on your live, mate. As obviously you've mentioned and introduced me, my name is Songezo. My surname is Nyilla. I'm a founder and director of Songezo Nyilla Attorneys. We are based in Fourways, Johannesburg, in an office park called Waterford Office Park. If anyone wants to know more about us, they can obviously look us up on Facebook, or our Instagram page, or our LinkedIn page. We do also have a Twitter account, but I mean, it's not as active as the other three that I've just mentioned. However, there's also a website if you want to know more about us at www.songsinc.co.za. And I mean, you guys, if you have more questions after this session, you can email me at info@songsinc.co.za.
Okay, great stuff, guys. Do check out the Songs Inc. Website, because I actually went on it myself, and it breaks down the process of convincing, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, we do have a step-by-step process. After you've bought property, what happens? So
All right.
the explanation that's on the website is very, very, very simple for a person who obviously maybe a first-time home buyer, or a person
Yes.
who really just wants to know more of the process as to what happens after you've bought the property, because you've mentioned that it is quite very legal intensive, and you do need a bit of education. I mean, before you buy your most prized asset as property, you definitely need some bit of education before you commit to it.
I definitely agree with that. And
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
that note of simplicity, there's just one thing that I feel like I would like for you to unpack for us. Like, it's the importance of the offer to purchase, and what really can go wrong if I sign an offer to purchase and then decide to change my mind later.
Yes. Look, Nhlaka, firstly, I must explain what is an offer to purchase. You know, for those who have never bought property or who have never attempted to buy property, an offer to purchase is a document that governs the entire transaction between you as the buyer and the seller.
Huh?
So this means that basically you as the buyer, you are putting in an offer to buy Mr. Seller's property. You know, it could be a house, or it could be a vacant piece of land that you want to build on. So once, obviously, you may be assisted by an agent, or you could have approached the seller personally. So once that document is presented to the seller, meaning that the seller will have an asking price. An asking price is what the seller intends to sell the particular property for, and you as Mr. Buyer will then make an offer based on the asking price. You can say, well, if an asking price for this particular property is R1,000,000, I'd like to make an offer of 900,000. Okay. And Mr. Seller can decide whether they accept or decline your offer, and they may have other offers from other potential buyers. However, if they do accept your offer, then that becomes now an agreement of sale between you, the buyer, and the seller. Okay. So once that agreement of sale is signed, it becomes now binding both on you, the purchaser, and the seller. So what this does
So can I
is
just, sorry,
firstly,
take you a step back,
yeah,
if you don't mind?
yeah.
So when I'm making
Yeah.
this offer, as a potential buyer, when I'm making the offer, is it a verbal offer, or can it be an offer that I make, or must it sent via email, or like how exactly do you make that offer?
So no. Buying a property in South Africa is very highly legislated. So it's not like you're renting a property where you can go to your landlord and then make a verbal agreement. Buying
Mm-hmm.
immovable property in this case can mean a house, it can mean a vacant piece of land. You cannot
Okay.
do that verbally. It is governed by an act called Alienation of Land Act. In terms of that act, it's clear. It says any agreement to buy and or sell immovable property has to be in writing. Hence, we spoke about the offer to purchase. So that offer to purchase is a legal and binding document that you, the buyer, present to the seller to offer a certain amount based on the asking price, and the seller will accept. So the golden rule is it always has to be in writing. Okay, so it's in writing how? In a form of an offer to purchase, which offer to purchase, once you've made an offer as the buyer and the seller accepts, then it becomes a binding agreement of sale. Okay, we no longer call it now an offer to purchase or OTP. It now becomes a binding agreement of sale between you, purchaser, and the seller. Okay, so this document, so this document is very important, Nhlaka. It's extremely important in the sense that it obviously protects the rights of the seller, and it also protects the rights of the purchaser. So anything outside that particular offer to purchase is really immaterial, and it only gets used in the event of the dispute and parties eventually go to court to litigate on that particular dispute. Then you can introduce whatever that was discussed outside of that agreement, like for instance, email communication, etc., etc. So it has a potential to protect their rights. Hence, it's very, very important when you complete that offer to purchase. Obviously, firstly, before you even go there and making an offer, you must have viewed the property. Okay. Yes. So as the buyer, you definitely need, if you are not assisted by an agent, it's prudent that at least before you even put pen to paper and sign the agreement of sale or the offer to purchase, at least go twice, And I always say this to my clients that because you only find out after people have signed, then they come to you for advice, and you say, look, the most prudent thing to do before you even purchase or sign that offer to purchase, go at least twice, If for the first time you went during the day, or you went, say, in the morning, obviously that particular neighborhood would be a very quiet neighborhood because people are at work, kids are at work. Try and go in the evenings or in the afternoons at least, just to see the activity, because you won't be able to tell if a particular area is a crime-ridden area or not without you being there, And in some areas it's easy to see, by virtue of the fact that it is abnormally busy and the fact that, you see people loitering around, and then you can make a decision whether you want to buy. So after you've made your decision, you obviously sign the offer to purchase, the seller accepts it. And when they accept, for you as the buyer, the only way to protect yourselves is to make sure that you write in special conditions. There's what we call special conditions. For instance, you go and view and you see that really the ceiling is falling apart,
Yeah.
And that's just one example. And it can be small things, such as a tap leaking, and maybe in the bathroom your toilet's not working, and there's damages. There could be mold behind your bathtub, those kind of things. So those are the things that buyers need to look out for, and they must definitely put it in the offer to purchase as a special condition to say, before the actual transfer of the house to my name, I want all of these things listed here to be fixed by the seller. Okay, so that's just one part of the importance of the OTP. All right.
Okay. So now,
yeah, and
what happens if, then now I've signed this offer to purchase, right? And I thought I'd found my home, and actually I see another dream home of mine, and now for that reason, I now feel like I don't want to buy a house anymore. I want to buy this house. Or if from an investing point of view, I found a potentially better investment, and I now want to pull out of this agreement and want to sign another agreement with another seller. What then happens?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm glad you asked that. I get a lot of those requests or those questions. People are messaging us on Facebook to say, hey, I've signed this offer to purchase. And, I know the banks is going to approve me. However, I've seen a better property. I want to pull out of this deal, you know? And it's not as easy like that. You know, I must just warn people out there that it's not as simple like that to just decide that, really, I've seen a better unit or a better property that will give me
Yeah.
better returns than this one. And now all of a sudden I want to pull out, you know? I'll give you as an example. I had a client recently who bought in a new development. Okay. Obviously, buying in a new development is what we call you buy in an off plan. And by the time the buildings are going up, you've already signed, the banks have already approved you. And when the client decided that actually, after doing his research around the neighborhood, that the potential return on this property, at least it will take me the first 5 years to see a bit of return. You know, instead I'll be contributing more towards the levies, towards my bond repayment, after the tenant has paid me, and he wanted to pull out. You know, and unfortunately at that stage, the development was very close to being registered, and it was close to being registered in his name. And there are all sorts of costs, of legal costs that you'll be liable for if you do pull out. Okay. So hence it is very important before you sign, either get advice from an attorney or at least be sure that it is the property that you want and that you've made your final decision. Unless, of course, you know, unfortunately, the bank doesn't approve you, that means you'll be out of the deal anyway, and you can't buy the next property anyway. So the most important thing to know or take out of your question is, before you sign the offer to purchase, make sure it is the property that you want, because once you sign, it becomes binding between you and the seller. Okay, and the only condition that obviously protects or has a potential to protect both you and the seller is what we call a suspensive condition. Suspensive condition means that the contract or the agreement is suspended up until the happening of a future event. So in this case, that event will be, okay, I've signed it. However, I've been given 14 days to go source finance, meaning approach the banks to get the particular finance to purchase this property. Okay. So within that period, it means the contract is suspended up until that condition has been fulfilled, meaning that up until you get your approval or a decline from the bank. If you do get an approval, obviously the seller will know one way or another, because at that stage, the deal will already be with the attorneys and people will be following up to see if you do get that approval. And if they find out that you did get the approval, it means the deal becomes now binding and you cannot simply pull out. That's just an unfortunate part. It's not like buying any other asset. And, you know, I've got clients asking me, but what about the Consumer Protection Act? Unfortunately, this won't apply in this case. Buying immovable property, the only time the Consumer Protection Act will protect you, and it only protects you in as far as saying, if the property is less than 250,000, then you have a cooling off period after signing the offer to purchase. So you have a cooling off period of 5 days to decide or make a decision whether I want it, do I not want this property. And I mean, if it's less than 250, you simply notify the seller that actually I've changed my mind. You know? Yeah. Other than that, for property above that, you can't.
That becomes difficult because properties these days, you really don't find many properties under the price threshold of 250,000.
Yes.
Emphasizing that point of making sure when you know that you are signing, you know exactly what you're doing.
Exactly. You need to know at least the basic education that we're providing in this platform should be able to help you to, you know, when approaching an agent or you've seen that one property that you really like, you know, make your property suit. I mean, there's fortunately these days you can always pre-qualify yourself and see if you do pre-qualify and before you really sign on the dotted line and say, okay, I want this.
So now I'm looking at it, and then when we look at the transfer, well, after the signing of the offer to purchase, there's a point in time where you sign a lot of documentation, and there's transfer costs and there's transfer. I don't really understand what is the difference between the transfer costs and transfer duty, and why are you actually paying those costs? I've seen a lot of people actually mistaken the two for transfer duty for transfer costs.
Yes, yes.
So maybe could you just break down what's the difference exactly, and why do we pay costs? What are they for?
Yeah, I think what's funny with that question and what's really confused people even more was that statement that was made by our finance minister during his budget speech in Feb. He said there won't be transfer duty payable on properties that are less than $1 million. So I think most people really assumed that I can buy property up to $1 million and not pay anything, which is completely false. It's completely untrue. In fact, the difference between the two is transfer duty, firstly, is a form of tax. It's tax that is payable by SARS. Taxman wants their tax for every property that is being bought and sold in South Africa, more particularly properties that are over $1 million. So during the tax year, that is 2019, 2020, that threshold of $1 million was actually 900,000. So if you were buying property back then, that was before the 15th of Feb 2020, if you've signed and bought property, you wouldn't pay transfer duty. Okay. And now it has been increased to about $1 million. So now the difference is transfer costs are the fees of the lawyers. Okay. We are obviously business people who are not doing this for free. So yes, so those are the costs to do the transaction and get the property registered in your name as the buyer. Okay, so those costs are payable by the buyer. All right, and those costs, the transfer costs, may include what we call the transfer duty, because from the lawyers you're going to get a pro forma statement to say this is what you need to pay, and the lawyers are in fact acting as agents of SARS to collect the transfer duty tax. Okay, so the tax will be included in that statement of costs that you need to pay. So the only now difference is when you bought property that's less than $1 million, you're not paying that tax. You will simply be paying the transfer fees to the lawyers. The fees are the professional fees that the lawyers charge for doing the transaction. Transfer duty is the tax that is payable to SARS. So if the property that we are buying is over $1 million, then SARS charges the tax, the transfer duty tax, on a sliding scale. For instance, if it's a property of $1 million up to 1,375,000, then you start paying 3% of the amount above the million. If you understand what I'm saying. So if it's $1 million and 1 point, yeah, it's the difference. The above $1 million, and say for instance it's 1,020,000 that you are buying for, you are paying transfer duty tax on the 20,000. So meaning 3% on that 20,000. Okay, and then obviously it goes on a sliding scale. The expensive the property that you are buying, the more tax, the more transfer duty tax you are paying to SARS. Yeah. Okay.
Then where does it happen? Because I've seen a lot of times when there's a new development, they say that you don't have to pay transfer duty. I think it is. Is it transfer duty or transfer cost? Fees, the transfer cost, you would still be liable for that, and then transfer duty is not.
Yeah, actually, the nice thing about buying in a new development, you have a benefit of not paying transfer duty and a benefit of not paying transfer costs as the buyer. Okay. Yes. So how this happens is, firstly, developers, when they sell these units, they charge VAT on it. So on a VAT transaction, there's no transfer duty payable. Okay. First. And then secondly, with lawyers' transfer costs, the developer actually covers the costs, pays the costs to the attorneys who are doing the transfer into your name. So meaning that you as the buyer, you're basically paying nothing except for the other costs that you will incur afterwards, because buying property is not just about transfer and or board costs. There's other costs that you obviously incur.
So then, would I be incorrect maybe by assuming that when I am buying in a new development, basically the developers have already incorporated the cost of the lawyers into the price? Well, I guess maybe from my side, I'm thinking it would make more business sense on their side to actually increase the price slightly, maybe by 20,000. They know that 20,000 needs to go to Songezo Inc.
Look, actually not, because what most developers do, their price is determined per square meter of that property. Okay, and then the packs which is obviously a marketing ploy on the part of the developers, is that they offer you these packs to say no transfer costs and no bond costs payable, and obviously transfer duty. They're not incurring anything because already it's a VAT transaction, and therefore they're not paying anything to SARS except for the VAT that they've already charged in the purchase price. And there's a further value add to buying that. For instance, most developers will say, okay, we'll offer you snag appliances for the unit. Okay, so they'll offer you a fridge, they'll offer you a kettle, toaster, exactly. So those are the nice things. However, they may or may not include it in the purchase price. It's just the developers, when they calculate the purchase price, it's per square meter, and all the other costs they will cover. Because remember, that's buying in bulk. Many people buy off plan, and by the time the transaction actually gets registered at deeds office, and the unit is now in your name, it's more often maybe 7-8 months down the line. Okay, after signing the offer to purchase. So it takes that long. So the developer is able to obviously cushion their costs by the bulk selling of the units.
Okay, speaking of now that you've broken down and you now understand the development side of things, when you are transferring this property, why is it that it takes such a long time? I've heard cases where it takes 3 months, other people it takes 6 months. Is there a specific time frame it's supposed to take, and why would it extend longer than that?
Yeah, look, it's simple. The normal process is 3 months, which is 90 days that you need to expect after signing the offer to purchase. Okay, so after signing the offer to purchase, the lawyers now come in, because firstly, there will be normally 3 sets of lawyers in that one transaction that you sign for as the buyer. Okay. So how do these 3 different lawyers come into the transaction? Firstly, you've signed an offer to purchase. It gets given to the lawyer or the attorney, which is normally us, who do the transfer. Okay, the transfer is the change of ownership from the seller into your name, and that's what the first lawyer is doing. And more often than not, the seller, when they are selling, they themselves had borrowed money from the bank, and the bond was registered over their house. So that bond needs to be cancelled. And what the bank will do, they issue what we call discharge figures or settlement figures. Okay, so those settlement figure that is issued by the bank will come out of the purchase price. That will be paid by the buyer. Then the bank gets settled. So the bank will then appoint its own lawyer to attend to the cancellation of that existing bond. Okay, and then the third set of attorneys in this transaction. Oh, firstly, let me explain this. The first set, which is the transferring attorney, their costs are paid by the buyer. The second attorney, which is the cancellation attorney, cancelling the existing bond over that property, having been appointed by the bank, those costs are paid for by the seller. Okay. And then the third set of attorney in this one transaction, or in this same transaction, is the bond attorney. So meaning that the buyer, after signing the order to purchase, would have approached a bank, maybe FNB, Standard Bank, to say, okay, I want a loan of 1.5 million. I've seen this property. Please finance it. So when they are financed, the bank, in order to obviously minimize its risk, they then want to register a bond over the house. That is why now we hear of terms like bond repayments after you purchase the property. And the bank obviously will assess the affordability of the potential buyer. Are they blacklisted? Are they not? And, things, dynamics such as, is this person married and how are they married in community or out of community property? And I mean, that's another topic altogether, because I feel like people still need to get education on that. So if you are married in community, what are the benefits? And certainly if you're married out, what are the benefits? Anyway, I'm digressing. So now the third set of lawyers, the bond attorney, gets appointed by the bank, but their fees, their professional fees, again, get paid by the buyer. So when buying property, you have a burden of two sets of professional fees or costs that you're paying. You're paying it to the transferring attorney, you're paying to the bond attorney. And then in that process, once that process starts, then you have city council or the municipalities that come into the picture. Okay.
Yes.
Then you have the deeds office. You have SARS that comes into the picture. So before you even lodge and register this matter at deeds office, you must have settled, firstly, the existing municipal bill of the seller. Okay. The transferring attorneys will request the municipality to issue what we call rates and taxes figures. So what the municipality wants is, before you sell your house, they want the seller to pay the areas. They want the seller to pay and cover the municipality at least for the 3 months before registration. Okay, that will be your rates and taxes. That will be your water, and if they're paying postpaid electricity and refuse removal. Okay. So that cost, so those rates figures extinguish the debt of the seller, so that when the buyer takes over as a new owner, they start from a zero account with that municipality. They start paying their own rates and taxes. Okay.
But
Hence,
now,
I
what
said
if I
earlier,
have a lot of outstanding rates and taxes and I don't have the money? Is it possible to take it from the sales price?
It is possible to take it from the sales price. However, you don't take it up front. You take it when the property gets registered at deeds office as the seller. So what will happen, there's companies that borrow, we call bridging finance companies. They borrow the sellers that kind of money if they don't have money to pay the rates. They borrow the sellers, and then obviously they get paid on registration. Okay. So that is why you find that this process takes a little bit longer, at least up to 2 months to registration. Because of all of these hurdles that obviously it's not, you can't go to any municipality and say, I want raise figures, and you get it the same day. It's impossible. Yeah. So in a nutshell, that is why the transfer process takes a little bit longer. But when it gets to finality now, when it's a deeds office, the deeds office, obviously the process there is still manual process, and it takes at least 7 to 10 working days to get it registered in your name. Okay. And then once it's registered, if you've borrowed money from the bank, obviously the title deed doesn't come to you as the buyer. The title deed will be taken by the bank that you borrowed money from, and obviously they take it for safekeeping up until obviously the 20 years. If it's a 20-year loan, the 20 years lapses and you paid off your debt to the bank, they then cancel the existing bond and release the title deed back to you. However, you still do have a title deed. You can go apply for a copy at deeds office, or you can simply contact the attorneys who are doing the transfer. They'll give you a copy of the title deed. Okay. Yeah. So that's
yeah, I completely understand why it does seem like a really, really long process. And there's so many things, I think, from the legal side of things we don't understand. And even myself and people I know who are working in property that just don't understand. About being married in community, being married out of community. Like, there's so many things in property, and I think maybe this conversation is one we can definitely continue on another day. Continuously trying to teach as many people as possible about property. That mistakes can be minimized. I've seen people make some stupid mistakes, or I've heard people who DM me and they've made really stupid mistakes with the property, or they really struggle to figure out the owner of the property because someone left it and was inherited. People don't want to move out. Like there's so many things in property, and educating us like this as
Yeah.
so is really appreciated.
Yeah.
We should definitely
No,
definitely have
definitely. No, definitely. We need to continue this conversation because there's a lot of topics we can cover. Because I mean, especially with middle class, obviously you will get excited with buying your first home, you know,
Yes.
and you are bound to make mistakes, you know, along the way. I just wanted, obviously, to point out the fact that it's not only about there's costs in buying a house. Okay, so and the mistake I've seen people making in this business is now they've signed the offer to purchase. The bank has given them the money to buy. They qualify, obviously. But the most important thing they forgot is the costs, is to save up for the costs. Now they don't have the transfer costs. They don't have the bond costs. Some of them will be shocked that, now I'm paying the second lawyer's bond costs, you know? So that's the biggest, and some deals fall through because the buyer didn't really budget for the costs, you know? And it's one of the things that really is easy if you know to budget for, because even before you go and look for that house on Property 24, you will know that actually there's minimum, say, of 50K that I need to have aside from the money that the bank will borrow. Okay? Because now they will want to go and take out a credit card after the bank has approved to pay for the costs, you know, which is really detrimental. Yeah, it's detrimental, firstly, to the affordability, and secondly, a bank will reassess before registration and they may get declined after that, you know. So yeah, it's the bond costs, which is the biggest deterrent for people in buying property. And certainly people need to consider that after you've bought the property, you need to move into it. You know, the moving costs that you need to cater, you know, and there's also the general maintenance and upkeep of the property. Because once it's registered in your name, remember you've bought now a second-hand property. Obviously, this differs if you buy from a development. If you've bought a second-hand property, there will be maintenance. And usually in that agreement, you're buying the property footsteps, meaning you're buying it as it is. Therefore, this means you cannot then, after registration, and ask the seller, no, you must come fix the garage door, it's not working, you know, the gutters are not working properly, you must come fix this, you must come fix that. It becomes your baby, it becomes your problem, you know, because it is a second-hand property. The seller is probably obviously upgrading or downgrading, and obviously there are living problems behind. That's the one thing you must expect, and you must. But there's obviously ridiculous things that obviously the seller will still need to repair before registration.
It takes us back to what you said earlier, that view the property more than once. If you view it more than once, the first time you come, you might be able to see certain things that you would. The second time, you come, you might see things that you didn't see the first time around, and that might maybe change your decision, or maybe it might give you some sort of negotiating power in terms of the property. I agree, definitely.
Yeah. And there's also the issue of rates and taxes that you need to pay, and the insurance, because you need to have building insurance. If it's a freehold property standalone, you must have building insurance that you're paying for. You must have security that you will pay for, because in all honesty, we're living in South Africa. We know crime is a factor. So those are just unavoidable costs, you know. And of course, you need furniture. You know, that's another thing.
Unless you live in Midrand.
You said it, not me.
All right, man. Thanks a lot, though, for joining me again today. We'll definitely repeat the session. And before Instagram kicks us off for reaching the mark, I think we can leave the call here today, and we can resume on another day. Thanks again for joining.
Yes. No, look, there's people who are already asking questions. I can see them questions popping up. But I think what we can do, I can then obviously I've given my email address.
Yes.
I mean,
Could you just please
I'll
provide,
definitely.
could you please just provide your details again so that if anyone does want to reach, you
Yes,
know
and
exactly where
also,
to.
yeah, and also a disclaimer. I guarantee you guys, I'll provide a free first consultation. You know, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for free. You know, my details will be. Please email me at info at Songs Inc. That is SONGZ Inc. That is inc.co.za. Or you can simply visit our website, www.songsinc.co.za, and you can leave your message there. I'll definitely attend to it, or one of my team members will answer your questions. Or
So,
reach us on Instagram
okay,
as
Instagram.
well. Yeah.
Okay, so if just in case anyone didn't get that, I will save the live and I will put the details as well in the description below. And if you'll be seeing this on my YouTube channel as well, you'll see it
Yeah.
on the description channel, on the description section below. So thanks again,
Yes.
Songezo.
No worries. Thank you,
I don't know
sir.
if you have any
And my
closing
WhatsApp
remarks.
number. Yeah, and my WhatsApp number, they can also WhatsApp me on 074-324-0002. And obviously that number I'll take and respond to WhatsApp messages. Otherwise, I was happy, very, very happy to conduct this session with you. Thank you, Nhlaka. And hopefully we can expand and educate people some more. And because I think there's a lot of legal education that's needed around the topic of buying real estate.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Okay.
And cheers. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, mate. Cheers, you too.
Thanks.
Bye.
So that was Songezo Nyilla of Songezo Nyilla Attorneys. He's an attorney, a property attorney. So if any of you guys are interested in purchasing a property or just getting some legal advice on property, definitely get hold of him. And I will leave his details in the description when I save the live, so that if anyone does need to get hold of a property lawyer, because there are so many things and you definitely don't want to make a mistake. We'll be definitely doing another session with him to discuss other things in property that are relating to purchasing and selling property. And I'll also be getting other property investors and other, for example, bond originators and bankers who can come in and actually shed some light for us so that we can understand exactly the buying process, the selling process holistically. We don't want to make mistakes in property. If you make a mistake when you're purchasing a property, realize that it's hundreds of thousands of rands or millions of rands if you do qualify in that bracket. So there are so many things that we definitely need to get educated on. And unless you studied it, like Songezo did, because he's a lawyer, unless you studied it, you would not know, or you would find out by being burnt. And I was nearly burnt before, so trust me, I know. The first property that I purchased, I didn't budget for bond costs and transfer costs, and at the end I had a 20,000 rand amounts that I needed to pay, and I just really did not budget for it. At least the bond costs, we were able to be capitalized onto the bond, onto the cost of the house. But now I'm stuck with this 20,000 rands that I needed to pay, and I needed to come up with it like ASAP, because I found out at the end, just before the house was about to transfer. So I am one of those people who ended up using debt to pay for those costs. And I know that it's not nice. Now you have to pay back that debt, and you set back 20,000 rands and you were not expecting it. So definitely do tune in into one of our other lives that I will be having with Songezo to make sure that you don't make silly mistakes. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me today. And if you do have any questions, do hit him up in his on his WhatsApp. I will leave his WhatsApp details also in the description, as he's provided them. Also his email address, and as well as the Instagram handle, so that you can contact him if you do need any legal advice. That's it from me, and thank you again for joining me. I'll see you guys on my next live. Cheers.